Why do we start in the backs, bringing back Richie into 10 and Aaron into 9? It feels like you're kind of close to back to your full strength back line.
Well, we're certainly looking at the combinations we've had in the second and third bled. We're certainly going back to that. There's no doubt about that, and it's there's a number of players have had a week off and fresh, and there's the whole team is pretty determined to put a performance on that we show that we've grown over the last few weeks. So going to those existing combinations, I think is quite important.
Bring back Jack into that midfield to partner Anton as well. What do you prefer about the Goodhue Leonard Brown combination in the midfield?
Oh, they've played well together this year, and we've got a left footer in Jack. We've got like he's a very calming influence on our midfield. I felt the tests that he's played, I think he's got better and better. I thought he was a little bit quiet in his first one, but he's really growing and communicating and contributing a little bit more on attack, and so him and Albie seem to go pretty well together. But it's also good to be able to, we've got Rico sitting there on the bench to inject at some point, and to work on continuing his growth in that position.
Those Scott and TJ are probably the biggest casualties after last week. Is that a direct result of their performances last week, or more about giving up other guys opportunities?
Well, Scott's he's had a long time out with his toe. He's come back and had 2 stints off the bench and played last week. So his is purely a rotation decision, as is TJ's. Like TJ played a massive part of the game last week. It was a very sort of physical, particularly defensive game, and so he played a lot of minutes, and it meant that we didn't really get a chance to put Brad on for long. So it's more of a reward for Brad. We still want to give him some time, and so it's actually more about Brad than it is about TJ. But overall, we're happy with where TJ's at, and he'll freshen up, and I know he'll come back with plenty of energy in the next one. Hello?
Sorry. G'day, Ian. Elliot at News Talk.
Hey, Elliot.
Were you tempted at all to give Akira another start, given he only had 20 the other week through no fault of his own?
Yeah, very tempted. But again, there's no hiding the fact that we're disappointed with how we played last week, and we need to come and keep continuing some areas that we have done well, and we kind of felt as a team that we'd go to those combinations that worked well in Eden Park and Sydney, and that's probably come at a cost for Akira. So, but again, I keep reiterating he's training well. He's like a number of them. They're keen for another opportunity, and there's still something to come in a couple of weeks, and so we'll assess it then.
Can I just ask you? I know you put your thoughts out on social media last night on the All Blacks channel, but does he stay with the team now? Is he coming back home early? How does that work?
Sorry, I missed that, Elliot. Was that Akira? Offer, sorry.
Offer.
Yep.
Is he coming home? How does that work?
No, Offer's with us, and we're looking at the potential choice of maybe sending a few players home earlier, like maybe early next week once we get through this game, to actually give people a chance to have a bigger break before Super Rugby, and with the size of the squad we got. So if that happens, then Offer would be one of those people.
Thank you.
So Ian, if you beat Argentina and win convincingly, could you then look to send a chunk of guys home? Is that what you're saying? Or...
Is that what I'm saying? No. Well, it's always been our plan with the squad that we've got. If we had an opportunity to, without having a lot of injuries, if we don't have a lot of injuries, then there was a chance that we could send a small number back a week or 10 days or whatever earlier, so that they could commence their quarantining and I guess have a bigger break because we've still got Super Rugby starting late February next year. So we're very cognizant of that. So it's something that we're going to assess at the end of this game, see how we come through with injuries and make a decision there. But we've still got to make sure that we've got a squad that's capable of preparing really, really well for the last Argentinian test.
How tempted were you to make fewer changes because of the result last week and give some of those guys another crack, if you like?
Yeah, look, it's always tempting. It's but I think we've had a strategy in our plan, and I think we've been reasonably transparent with that. That we, our number one priority was to win the Bledisloe. Our number two is to win the TriNations, and our number three was to, where possible, to give some, to give a number in our squad an opportunity. So, largely our strategy hasn't really changed based on the result. It's but certainly it's it is disappointing, and it's really important that we get the levels of our game back to where we felt they were, and we keep growing them. And particularly, last week I don't think we were smart enough to see the space that was offered and take it, and so we're excited about carrying on. We worked hard on that this week, and secondly, we've got to continue our growth at the breakdown, and I think it's an area that's going really well for us, both in attack and defence. We're getting quick ball, and we're actually been very threatening in terms of stealing ball at the breakdown. So I'm really pleased with our growth there, but we want to keep doing that to ensure that what we're doing is really cemented with this group. And so over the next two tests, I guess there's still going to be opportunities for players, but as a team, we've got to keep progressing in those zones.
In 4 tests into your tenure, did you expect to be this sure about your first choice starting team, or did you think there might be a few more contestable positions around?
Oh, I think there's a number of contestable positions around, but I think it's as a coach and as a group of selectors, it's where there's two things we're looking at is how do you keep growing your game, and clearly having combinations, and that's a part of that, but we also need to keep winning and grow depth, so it's getting that balance. But it's not just the last week we had a number of players that we had Joe Moody who was out with a bit of a bug. We had Paddy the same, so some of the changes have been because of illness or other injury, and so but we're really pleased with some of the competition. But what it does teach you is that when you get a chance, this All Black demands a performance. This All Black jersey does, and when we don't perform at the level that we expect, then we've got to go away and work twice as hard off the park, as do the individuals.
Just a quick word on Tyro Lomax, something of a big mover, I guess. He's impressed off the bench and now gets a starting chance. And what's he done in your eyes to sort of earn that right?
I think I said earlier in the week he's really worked hard on his strength, his all body strength and his core strength, and we're reaping the rewards for that. And he's working hard on, I guess, his whole fitness side, as aerobic base, and now we're starting to see a work rate around the park that's really suited to a test level. So he's made some significant shifts in those two areas, and I guess with Offa's suspension and Nepo coming over late, this is a great opportunity for him to go into that starting mode, and really he's just got to continue to do what he's been doing off the bench and just enjoy the occasion with that in mind.
Ian, it's Gregor here. Can I just go back to Jack and Anton for a second? And you've probably answered this question before, but just so I'm aware, why have you decided to set them up in the way that you have with Jack at 12 and Anton at 13? I mean, they're obviously both versatile footballers, but why is it that you've gone with that particular setup?
Oh, they end up moving around a little bit during the game, so I think that they're both certainly interchangeable. I like Anton's feet his ability to change lanes late in attack, and I think running off people is one of his strengths, and he can do that. And I think he has a little bit more space to do that at 13. Defensively, I think Jack's a really good communicator inside and out on defence, and he gives a lot of confidence to those. So having him in the middle works really well for us, and as does having his left foot in a more of a kicking position, and it's an area that he's growing. And I think we saw a great kick from him in the Sydney Test that contributed to a try scoring situation. But that's an area that he's grown. So it seems to suit how we play at the moment. And but again, the exciting thing is that they're interchangeable, those two.
Ian, is that just you looking back at Marnolo and that kind of profile player at 12? Is that the All Blacks going, we want to be able to have another mark kind of figure at 12?
No, not at all. I think there's only one Marnonu, and you get dealt. Every player you get in the midfield has a different strength, and it's a matter of us of choosing the right game and strategy for the players that we have. And I think Jack's he's got a great wide pass from that suits us at 12. If you can distribute and have a really good distributor off 12, that means you can actually check inside defence for a little bit longer. So there's just a different way of using players, and so we're trying to utilise some of Jack's strengths with his distribution and certainly his organisation, and it actually we feel it frees up Anton a little bit more in terms of the attacking part of his game with his footwork and his offload and his ability to set people up outside. So it's just I guess they've got a different skill set that in a combination we like it, and we give them another opportunity to develop that.
Ian, Mark here. I'm sure you're happy to have Aaron Smith back, igniting your game at halfback this week. At 30, I think he's 30 or even 31, in his early 30s anyway. What are you seeing from him that's enabled him to stay so on top of his game at this stage of his career?
Utterly professional in terms of how he prepares himself, how he prepares his body, his fitness side of his game. He's got a big engine, and I think over the time he's developed a really clear understanding of his role in this team, and he is. I think he's always been a great communicator, but I think he's become a great listening halfback, in that he really responds to the people around him and to the calls, and as long as we get clear communication, his ability just to go and get the ball where we need it to go is very, very good, and that's been his greatest strength in many ways. And I think and if you combine that with TJ, and TJ is a very different halfback, very physical, but ironically, in the large parts of the Brisbane game, I thought TJ was very quick to the ruck and moved in it, and it wasn't necessarily his fault that the people outside him didn't see the opportunities there. So, I think we've got a formula for our nines, but Aaron's been a big part of defining that. And like I said, he's a great listener. He picks up cues from our attackers really well and responds quickly to them.
Just in terms of Argentina, we all know they haven't played a test since the Rugby World Cup. What's your gut feeling about what you see from them on Saturday?
Probably the same as yours, really. It's. All we know is that they've been here for a while, so they've probably had something that most international teams never have, which is about 3 weeks of really solid training and preparation. So I'm sure that their game understanding is going to be high. They've had 2 really solid games the last 2 weekends over against Australia A, and immediately from looking at them, they've shown a lot of the shape and the flair that we've become accustomed to see from them. So, we're expecting a team that's going to be very well organised. I guess we've got to make sure that they take a little while to adjust to the intensity of a test match, and that's something that we've got to target well early. But they've got a lot of seasoned pros in their team, and so I'm sure they'll settle down very, very quickly, and we've got to make sure that we, I guess, use our experience from the last few tests to really impose ourselves on them.
And just a quick one, Rugby Australia and New Zealand Rugby have both indicated that there's likely to be that crossover Trans-Tasman Super Rugby matches following the respective tournaments. Off the back of last week's loss, just how significant would that be for both nations to be able to have that?
Well, I'm not sure what last week's loss has got anything to do with it, to be honest, but I know there's always been a plan for the two countries to talk about how they do a cross-border stuff. We're clearly in a changing environment that's meant the main Super Rugby competitions for each country is likely to be their domestic one, which we've already seen. And so if there's a possibility of linking it across, it's, clearly we want to be partners with Australia. Our players really respond to playing the Australian teams, and I think we'll both benefit from it. It's just getting the fine tuning on the format and how it fits into, what could become a pretty congested year.
Yeah, and you mentioned before about the expectation in the All Blacks when players are given a chance that they obviously need to nail it. Have you had to sit down with some players this week and reiterate that? What's the mood been like after that? What's last weekend?
Yeah, no, good question. It's look, I wouldn't say. I mean, the mood's always very different. We tell, it's always a sombering feeling when you lose in a black jersey, and we're frustrated about that. But there was a number of guys who went out, and it was sort of their first hit out for a while, and I know there was a bit of rust in the combinations, but I think, it was still a formula that I think that we had to do, because we've got some players here we need to give some opportunity to. But it is a stark reminder of you got to be ready, and so there's been a lot of good conversations going on this week. There's some players a little bit disappointed, and that's the way it should be. But it's really about taking those lessons, getting back to work, and us really focusing on what we're trying to do inside this camp to grow our game. And I just, it's part of it's been reminding the team that, we've come off two pretty significant victories, and we haven't been able to back those two up with another performance, and that's something we're always chasing, and we didn't get it. But we've got to move on and keep continuing the growth in some of the aspects of our game that I'm actually pretty pleased with.